What is up, guys? It is Joe. We're back. We're talking all about the Cats for the first time in 2025. A happy new year to all of you. Thank you all for the support this past year, folks. It's been a wonderful holiday season for myself. Got to celebrate Christmas with some family and take some much needed off time. So thank you guys for powering through the last couple days without some content. But I'm excited to get back to it today. This is going to be a big year for the Cats in multiple facets: recruiting, basketball, football, sports beyond the just main two. There's going to be a lot of great things to talk about, and I'm excited to have you here as always. Before I do get into the topic of today's video, one that I am stoked to talk about, to tell the truth, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button, as it does help me out immensely. As we continue to grow this thing, it's the best way to support me and support this channel. Subscribing, liking, commenting, everything does help out the algorithm, but subscriptions is the way to go. If you had to pick just one, it's free and it keeps videos on your feed in case you miss one of these videos. It's right there and it'll pop up real soon. But guys, let me jump into it today, talking about a 5-star tight end in the class of 2026, Ian Premer, the Great Bend, Kansas native, a dude we talked about a couple of times on the channel. Was a major factor in my mind during the Lincoln Cure commitment and that whole process, like understanding, hey, there's multiple talents in the state of Kansas at the same position, very similar upbringings, I would say. And Ian Premer is the next dude up in terms of Kansas State football recruiting. That wasn't until the other night when a massive change to the story happened, when Ian Premer announced he also received a basketball offer from Kansas State. Now, he's an absolute stud in both football and basketball, and I'm going to toss up highlights for both as I talk about him in different facets, but the idea is this. Ian Premer is a dynamic 5-star 2B type tight end. He's currently a 4-star, but it's still early in the class, but he currently ranks nationally the same Lincoln Cure did last year, so very, very likely going to be a 5-star. He's the nation's best tight end and the best player in the state of Kansas. The Midwest knows what they're doing with bringing up tight ends. He also is averaging like 20 and 10 for his basketball team right now, and I know that there's a couple of football dudes that have done both, at least in high school, and been really successful. This is a dude that absolutely could play both college basketball and college football. Now, there's a caveat. Does the kid want to do it? We'll talk about that here in a little bit, and I don't want to make assumptions because I haven't talked to him. I don't know him like that, but I can understand that this is an elite athlete that both staffs would be incredibly stoked to have if he does make that chance. If he doesn't go out for basketball, it's still a massive deal for Kansas State football. It'll be a similar recruitment to that of Lincoln Cure. He's that type of dude and one of the best athletes I've ever seen on film, folks. I'm going to be honest about that up front, but let me read some of his numbers so you get an idea. He's currently in his junior season at Great Bend. Obviously, next year's senior then would be a freshman at Kansas State if he chooses to commit. Grew up a Wildcat fan, Kansas State fan, and we'll read some background on that here in a minute. But the highlights you're about to see, I'll start with football and then go into basketball as well. The highlights you're about to see are from his junior year of football. Obviously, we're currently in the middle of his junior season in basketball, so we don't have highlights a ton for that yet. So we have sophomore highlights from the previous season. Still, the dude is impressive in both. So let me start rolling the football highlights here now, and I want to read you his football numbers, then I'll give you the breakdown and jump to basketball. So, Ian Premer, the 6'5", 220 tight end from Great Bend, Kansas, a guy that fits that same mold of like, this is a dude that everybody in the country wants. This is going to be a hot recruitment, but I do feel like the Wildcats are near the top of his list. Obviously, growing up in the state of Kansas and Western Kansas specifically, you understand what it means to be a Kansas State Wildcat. You understand what they've done for the sport of football in the state for local athletes, whether that's Bill Snyder or Chris Kleiman. You understand the local ties are there. I'm not going to beat around the bush on that. He currently is listed as the nation's 32nd best prospect. Only 31 dudes ahead of him in the entire country. He's the #1 tight end in the nation and the #1 player in the state of Kansas. He's a consensus 4-star across the board. Obviously, the 5-star comes with time. You know, you're still a couple years out for being the primary class. Obviously, 2026 next year. There's some guys that commit early, but this is still going to be a long, drawn-out recruitment. I mean, it could be swift, it could be quick and easy, but it's one where it's going to at least take a while till likely basketball season and football season is over. Ian Premer. I'll read you a couple of teams from his offer sheet for football, but just in theory, if you think of a team, they offered him. Colorado's a big one, Florida, Iowa State, KU, K-State, Miami, Michigan. I can go on and list Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oregon, USC, Texas A&M. There's 1,000 different teams that have offered it because he's an absolute stud. Kansas State, it sounds like, is the front runner as of right now, but I don't have enough intel on that front to actually make a educated claim. It just sounds like he's invested in Kansas State, been to the program a couple times, and this is what Greg Biggins from 24/7 Sports had to say about him, and this mentions both basketball and football. Premer is one of the nation's best two-sport athletes and a legit college prospect in football and basketball. He averaged 21.2 points and 9.2 rebounds a game on the hardwood and can absolutely play above the rim. He's being recruited heavier for football and was productive on both sides of the ball last season. At 6'5", 205, now 220 for those watching in on the video, he was a jumbo receiver who caught 32 balls for 538 yards and 9 touchdowns. He added 64 tackles and 4 picks while playing safety, but tight end is likely his meal ticket at the next level and beyond. He has a great frame, runs well, natural hands, routinely wins jump balls and gives you something after the catch. He lines up predominantly out wide, but will occasionally move into the slot. Has a huge catch radius, and you can see his hoops background and how easy he wins 50-50 balls, and should be an immediate red zone threat. We love the ceiling and feel he's a high major power 4 prospect who can play for any school in the country. And that's the thing. He legit can play for any school in the country, but not just in football. That's the insane part. I'll talk about basketball a little bit here, and I want to go a little bit deeper with my guy Cole Carmody. We'll talk about a piece he published here in a couple minutes, but I want to toss up some basketball highlights for Ian Premer as well, so you get an idea of both. But you saw him in football, superstar. Guy's going to be, a guy that'll go to the NFL, could be a first-round pick very easily. In a situation where you have the best tight end coach in the nation, in my mind, at Brian LePack, Kansas State breeds this type of tight end. You already had Ben Sinnott, a kid that walked on, obviously from Iowa, but close enough in proximity that you can appeal to the Midwest ideal of, hey, look what happens when kids stay home and work their tails off. Obviously, Lincoln Cure in the class before you is a big selling point, but overall, it sounds like Kansas State's just on top of the recruitment. So let me play some basketball highlights as we discuss the opportunity of him playing basketball for Coach Tang. And I want to say this right now, I'm here for both. I know some people are like, just focus on one. Do both, brother. If you can do both and pull it off, go for it, man. I mean, I'm not here to be some, legal advisor and tell you what's best for your future. I just want to say there's not many dudes that can pull it off. This is one that can and would be an absolute fan favorite. You think of a kid like Dean Wade. We'll talk more about Dean in a couple of minutes, but there is something beautiful about staying home, and athletes in the state of Kansas, specifically basketball, don't often do that. Obviously, the closest we have right now is David Castillo from the Oklahoma area, but guys in Kansas that are top athletes, whether they be college basketball, potential NBA guys, usually don't go to Kansas State. They end up at KU or they end up out of state at North Carolina or Duke or whatever. This Kansas State staff is doing a great job of recruiting this dude, and I'm excited to see they went and gave the offer. So talking about that offer specifically, I want to give a shout out to Go Power Cats Cole Carmody, friend of the channel, a guy I've talked with on this channel and on Go Power Cat and a couple other places. But Cole talked to Ian Premer about it because he has a good relationship with him, and I thought this was some awesome background information. So I won't want to reveal everything. I don't know if it's paywalled or not. It didn't look like it was a paywalled thing. So if I'm screwing this up, and it is, I owe you one, Cole. That's on me, brother. I'll buy you a beer. He basically just asked about the situation and said, is this something you're considering? And he basically said, I talked to Coach Tang once before in November, and yesterday he called and offered me. That's nothing, groundbreaking, but you think about this. He mentioned that we could when I talked in November. So Coach Tang's on board. Do we know if Coach Kleiman's on board? I don't think the story revealed that, but I assume if Coach Tang's going to say this, he's probably had some type of contact with Coach Kleiman, and even if not, I think this is a good thing regardless. It shows how much the university as a whole really is going all in on you. But this is what he had to say about the relationship with the K-State football staff. I have a great relationship with the K-State staff. I talk to a lot of the offensive coaches regularly and enjoy my conversations with them. Now, obviously, there's a ton of different things he has to think about, and if he's going to consider playing both ways, that's a decision for his own to make. But he said, I'm obviously still in the early stages, and I have thought about playing both a little. It'll be difficult schedule-wise, though. And no one's going to dispute that. If he can be a guy that can go 15, 7, and 7 on the basketball court and then average, 100 yards receiving at 2 touchdowns, dude has the ability, but in practice, that is so challenging to manage both sports. Your time frame is going to be tough. You got to commit to both, and it would take a relationship with the staff, but I do know that Jerome Tang in the past at Baylor has had guys that have gone out for the football team and played basketball at the same time, so it's understandable that these dudes are ready for that challenge. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. Will it work out? Will it happen? I'm not sure. But folks, I would absolutely love a local kid to stay in the state of Kansas. I always do. It's one of my favorite things to talk about on the channel. We'll talk about J.J. Dunnigan tomorrow. I don't know what the commitment sits at right now, but anytime you get a kid that stays local and stays true, that's a massive win for the entire state. Not just the individual program. When guys stay local, that's a win for the national scene, especially when it's a dude that's a 5-star type dude that has first-round NFL draft pick potential. When you choose to stay in the state of Kansas, whether it be Kansas State, whether it be KU, whether it be whatever, you are making a massive change for the state. K-State fans have seen that with Avery Johnson. You've seen it with Lincoln Cure. You saw it with Dylan Edwards coming back. There's a lot of good dudes that make the right call in my mind, but obviously there's going to be a lot of nuance to this recruitment. I don't know where it stands, but when Dean Wade made the choice to come to Kansas State, work out of St. John's, Kansas, still comes back and spends the off seasons in Manhattan and works in the gym, those are ties for life. There's something different about having a Kansas State basketball kid on the court than there is having a kid from Florida. I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say that it feels worse to cheer for somebody that's not from Kansas. I'm not going to sit here and say that, but it felt different cheering for Dean Wade and knowing how hard he's worked from a place like St. John's, Kansas. A small town, works his tail off, becomes an NBA prospect, is literally making millions of dollars to play basketball because he chose to go to Kansas State, work his tail off, and developed every single step of the journey. Dean Wade, a superstar athlete. Ian Premer has that ability, and I'm excited to see what happens there. But guys, I just wanted to make a quick recap and kind of overhaul the situation. I have no insight. I have no intel. I don't know Ian Premer like that. But I tell you what, I am rooting for him, and I hope the decision does come to Kansas State. And in the event he does, I hope it's both ways. If it's not, if it's just football, I'll be stoked either way. But I'm excited to talk about it. So guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Go Cats!